all the things were gone, work for my life, and I had to start again, just my children and my.
Hello, Mickey. Hello. Thank you for joining me.
Thank my lucky star.
Thank you for joining me, Mickey. We'll get started in just a moment. So thank you for joining. And anyone else just tunes in, please thank you again for joining me. I have a few things to talk about today. So I'm thankful for you all joining me here. Gary, Janet, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Feel free to share this posting as well. Looks like Valerie, Nora. Hello, Nora. Thank you for joining me. Yes. Eric, Jeff, thank you for joining me. Get started here in just a moment. Feel free to also, if you have people that are not on Facebook anymore, feel free to share YouTube page with them. It's Dr. Tim Wesley. I am going live there concurrently as well, so you can find me there. Charlene, thank you for joining. Going to share a few thoughts of what's not being told. You see a lot of stuff taking place in the media, and I'll be sharing some thoughts on what you're not being told, what's not being shown. So thank you for joining me. Just going to wait a few minutes, allow a couple more people to come. And I'm going to discuss a few things going on with the talk of the Trump impeachment. Pastor Warren, thank you for joining. All right. So I'll be sharing just a few things that's not been talked about, not being discussed with respect to the Trump impeachment discussions and things of that nature. All right. Amanda, thank you for joining. Michael, Amanda, Cornelius, Michael, Archer, thank you all for joining. All right. I hope I pronounced those names right. Forgive me if I didn't. And David, thank you for joining as well. All right. I see your point there, Arthur. So we're going to hit on a couple of things here, and we'll move forward. Don't want to keep you too long. All right. So thanks again for joining. A couple of things I want to point out for those that may or may not know. There is some active discussion taking place about a Trump impeachment. And so before I even get into that active discussion, I want to reemphasize what I spoke about on yesterday. Just want to reemphasize that number one, we should all continue to be in prayer for the lives lost in Washington, D.C. this week. We should all continue to be in prayer for our nation as a whole, regardless of your political leanings. We should all be in prayer for our nation moving forward. We should be in prayer for one another as neighbors, as family, as friends, even those you may not like that much. We should be in prayer because we are indeed, as I mentioned yesterday, we're at a crossroads, and it's going to take prayer to get us through this season of our journey in America. With that being said, we're at crossroad after crossroad. We heard from President Trump recently, and he mentioned that he's looking for a peaceful transition. And so with that being said, I want to lead off by telling you all this discussion, the information I'm going to share with you is not so much pertaining to a defense for Trump, but more importantly, if you all would just hear me out, more importantly, a defense of the Constitution, a defense of the Constitution. And so I saw mentioned 12 days, and indeed, there's just 12 days left. My Constitution is falling apart because I use it quite a bit. If you see it here, I use it quite a bit. It's highlighted and all types of things because I'm constantly reading it. I'm constantly looking at it. It's a great document. If you hadn't had a chance to read the Constitution, read it. But I want to share with you all what's taking place just so you'll be woke on the subject. What we see taking place now, again, I must emphasize as often as possible, I don't condone anything as far as those negative actions that took place in Washington, the destruction, the crime, the loss of life. I don't condone any of that. And I, again, pray for our nation. As a whole, we should be praying for one another, and regardless, again, of your political leanings. With that being said, my concern right now is that we're on a slippery slope with an attack on our Constitution, and I'll tell you how. I just finished listening to Congressman Al Green out of the Houston area, and he laid out a reason that he wanted to move forward, or the Democratic Congress wants to move forward on impeachment for or against President Trump. Now, a couple of things we must understand here. If we are to heal, and if you disagree that it's time for healing, then that's a problem. But if you agree that it's time for our nation to heal and move forward, then we have to start using common sense. We have to hold our elected officials to using common sense as well. Common sense says that as we saw the flare up this week and President Trump is ready to move on, it's time for the nation to move on. We're 12 days away from the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden and his vice president. We're 12 days away. At this point, we should begin to truly heal as a nation, regardless of what your position may be. But in this instance, we have Representative Al Green yelling, basically, or spewing the words out that it's time to impeach. Keep in mind, our Congress spent millions of dollars in impeachment efforts of President Trump during his term. It didn't make it through to a conviction in the Senate, so he remained seated. Here we are. And again, I just need you to think about and use common sense. Here we are 12 days away from an inauguration for a new president with a new party, with complete control of the House, with control, in essence, of the Senate. And so you must ask the question, why is it at this time, at this moment, at this juncture, with 12 days left and the quote unquote problems that we saw in Washington, why now do you want to try to impeach after you've spent millions doing it before? Why now do you want to try to spend more money and days? And this 12 days does not include, well, this does rather include the weekends. So think about this for a moment. Congressman Al Green, he spoke about moving forward, and he spoke about all the things that the impeachment is going to do. But we must understand there are two words I want you to consider as I continue this conversation. One word is objective, and the other word is subjective. When we look at subjective evidence and issues, that's based on personal feelings, taste, and or opinions. When we look at something that's objective, that's influenced by facts, ultimately influenced by facts. So right now we have Al Green, who used himself incendiary words inciting or fanning the flame. When I was a child, my mother used to say at times, don't fan the flame. We can all agree that there is a flame burning in America right now that we want to be extinguished. We want this flame out. Yet we have 12 days left for this flame to go ahead and just burn itself down, possibly not out. Yet the people that say we want to have peace and healing, people such as Al Green, Representative for Congressman Al Green in Houston, is using words and phrases talking about the Jews suffering, Muslims suffering under the administration, LGBTQ, Black people suffering, using words and phrases such as Islamophobia, xenophobia, homophobia, using all of these words to build a case in the eyes of the public to garner public sentiment for a subjective case of impeachment with 12 days left with President Trump. Again, there will be some that try to twist this up and say, oh, this is he's coming with the defense of President Trump. I'm defending the Constitution, and the Constitution will defend him. If we allow this to happen, and again, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or Libertarian, you should be concerned right now, because if we can allow a Congress to use subjective evidence based on their feelings, their emotions, etc., if we can allow this to happen at the final hour, then when will this happen against you? When will you be in the court of law and someone is simply using subjective evidence to ruin you? Think about this for a moment. And again, it's not about one individual person. It's about our nation. It's about the attack on our freedoms. It's about the attack on our country. It's about the attack on our constitutional rights and privileges. And again, if you would just hold on, I will tell you how this has been attacked. And if you're wondering, why now? Why at the final hour, if you have the House, the Senate, the executive branch, if you have all these branches here, why now in the final hour go after an impeachment? Now, I need you to understand now, these were the words of Congressman Al Green. We're going to get him for insurrection for what happened on the 6th. So again, that's subjective. We're going to get him for insurrection. And he also said, we want to get this president and impeach him for a weaponization of hate. Come on, people. Come on. I don't care your political leaning. When you hear a congressman saying that we want to impeach with 12 days left, and one of the things we want to put in the impeachment articles is that he had a weaponization of hate, how do you measure a weaponization of hate unless you're doing it from a subjective point of view versus an objective? For those that may be wondering, why did I mention that? Because ultimately, when we look at our Constitution and we look and find the reasons for impeachment, because again, there were already millions of dollars spent on an impeachment that didn't go the way that those that started this impeachment process planned. So 12 days out, does it make any sense for this impeachment to take place 12 days out? I'll tell you why it's taking place. I'll tell you why it's taking place. You hold on. Article 2, Section 4 says the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for, I'll stop there for a moment. You're trying to remove a person from office who has 12 days left. 12 days. You must ask the question, why? I'm going to give you the answer as to why we have a Congress that's getting ready to spend the final 12 days of this presidency trying to impeach him a second time in hopes of removing him. I'm going to tell you why they're doing it. So this says that they shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, which hadn't happened, bribery, which hadn't happened, that we have any evidence of, none of that, or high crimes and misdemeanors. Again, his words, Congressman Al Green of Houston, says that we're going to impeach him because of the insurrection that he started and caused on the 6th. Well, that's a slippery slope, because there are going to be a lot of convictions taking place. If that's going to be the standard that we can subjectively point someone and say, you're the reason for all of this, if we can subjectively do that, again, take the person out of the picture and look at people as a whole, look at us as a nation as a whole. At what point, when we move down this slippery slope of using subjective information, does it stop? When we say and hear someone like Representative Al Green says, we're going to make sure that we impeach him because he weaponized hate. Think about that. How can you measure that? Weaponized hate? We can look at the president that's coming in and say that he weaponized hate. We can look at people in Congress right now, we can say weaponized hate. Matter of fact, Al Green himself, if we go off the standard of which he's saying that an impeachment should move forward, he himself in his interview weaponized hate by race baiting, by using bigotry and Islamophobia, again, redefining words of phobia as a fear of something. And conservatives and Republicans I talk to, they're not fearing anything of that nature. But he's weaponizing hate himself. So you have a person that's fanning the flames and saying that they want to impeach for weaponizing hate, but they themselves are, quote unquote, by their standards, weaponizing hate to impeach a president with 12 days left, and it's unconstitutional. Why did they do it? He even mentioned, well, this president is not planning to show up at the inauguration in 12 days. We want to impeach him, but in the midst of wanting and trying to impeach him, he's not showing up at the inauguration. Representative Al Green, would you show up at the inauguration? Again, he's wanting to crank up emotions. When you have subjective matter that you're trying to convict someone on, you point towards personal feelings, taste, and opinions, and you try to move the emotions. And so what's happening, Representative Al Green is used as a pawn in this process to ignite the emotions of the people by using code words. LGBTQ, Muslims, what happened to them? Jews, what happened to them? Looking at Jews, it took President Trump to make sure that the U.S. Embassy was moved to Jerusalem. But when he uses words like Islamophobia, xenophobia, homophobia, race baiting, why? To build a public emotional case to support an unsubstantiated, subjective case for impeachment with 12 days left. You got your president coming. We have a new one coming, of which, for all the haters out there, I've already prayed for the incoming president and the incoming vice president. I don't care if I don't agree with your policy. God is greater, and he says that we're to pray for our leaders. Now, if you look at the word and you believe it, you're going to pray for them. But I listen to God and I please him first. Nevertheless, getting back to this, he says, well, he's not coming. That's sending a signal. It's sending a word for him not to show up at the inauguration. Well, patriots, people, Americans, citizens, regardless of your political leanings, he's not the first one not to show up at an inauguration. There have been at least four. There have been four that didn't show up to an inauguration, but he'll be number 4 as it stands. 1801, John Adams didn't show up to the inauguration. 1869, Democrat Andrew Johnson didn't show up to the inauguration. Son of John Adams, John Quincy Adams, in 1829, didn't show up to the inauguration. It's not anything that's uncommon in the modern era, but it's not uncommon. So you're darned if you do, darned if you don't. If he shows up at the inauguration, now there's going to be more reason to say now you're causing another problem by showing up to the inauguration because, quote unquote, your people, again, divisive language, will show up and cause problems. And if any problem is caused during the inauguration in the audience, he will definitely be blamed. But getting back to this idea of impeaching the president with 12 days left after Democrats have the White House, the House, and ultimately control with the Senate. So why impeach in 12 days? With 12 days left. Why impeach? I'll tell you why impeach. One, again, I must reemphasize it's subjective what they're doing. We've already spent millions of taxpayer dollars. We're on a slippery slope that if you as a citizen, regardless of your political leanings, if you're not on the phone and making calls to your congressman or woman, whoever they may be, whatever party, and saying, make sure we stand against this impeachment process, then we have a problem. Why impeach? Here's why. If the president, if they're successfully able to impeach the president with 12 days left, which means an impeachment must take place in the House and a trial must take place in the Senate, and a 2/3 majority is needed to convict. All of this must take place in 12 days. Why such a rush to try to get all of this done for a president who's heading out the door in 12 days? The reason is, and I go back to the Constitution. In our U.S. Constitution, again, if you hadn't read it, pick it up and read it. In our Constitution, and again, I listened to Representative Al Green, and not once did he state any of this. He only stated, we want to impeach him because he caused an insurrection this week, and because he caused all these problems with people over the years, and because ultimately he weaponized hate. Again, subjective, not objective. So why try to do this with 12 days left? Article 1, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution states that judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. What does that mean? That means, based on Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution, as it stands now, President Trump can run again for president in 4 years. And the Democrat-controlled Congress is fully aware of this. Fully aware that with over 70 million, right about 75 million people voting for him this time around, what will it look like in 4 years if he chooses to run again? However, they're fully aware that if we impeach him, and if we are successfully able to impeach him in the House, and it goes to the Senate, where there's a power leaning towards the Democrats, then if we're fortunate enough to convict him with 2/3 majority, the difference is it only takes 2/3 majority to convict, but in order to enact Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution, based on precedents, it only takes a simple majority to disqualify President Trump from running for any public office, especially the White House, ever again in the future. Did you hear me? It only takes at this point a simple majority, one more vote than the Republicans, once he's convicted, to make sure that he doesn't run again and that he's not able to run in 4 years. So when we hear about the presidents, it took place in 1862 with federal judge West Hughes Humphreys, impeached by the White House. It took place again in 1913 with federal judge Robert Archibald. It took place again after that. It took place multiple times. And my point is, once again, Why impeach a president that has 12 days left when Democrats have control of the White House, the House of Representatives, and in essence, the U.S. Senate? Why? Because at that point, the chances are they can possibly get this thing pushed through, whereby not only an impeachment and a hope for a conviction, but ultimately they're left now with the leeway to make sure they disqualify him to hold any public office again, which in essence will stop him from any opportunity to run for president again in 4 years. Again, I don't care your political leanings. That's your choice. What I am concerned about, though, as an American citizen, is that if we can allow our Constitution to be trampled for personal reasons, if we can allow it to be trampled for subjective reasons of personal feeling, opinions, taste, etc., if we can allow this to happen at the highest level with 12 days left, when we are as a nation trying to heal, and many of you want to heal and move forward, but yet we have people that say we have a fire burning, fanning flames. From the average eye of Americans, we can say unnecessarily. But when we know what the Constitution says, we see what the ends to the means are for those that's pushing for this impeachment. In closing, I ask you all to pray for our nation, as I did on yesterday. Pray for our nation. Republican, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, Green Party, it doesn't matter. Pray for our nation. I'm going to ask fellow Republicans, pray for the incoming president. Because as I told people that were Democrats I spoke with over the last 4 years, why do you want the president of these United States to crash and burn? Because if he's the pilot of the plane and the plane goes down, we go down with it. Why not say, while this plane is mobile and in the air, let's keep it up. We'll still voice our opinions and prepare to make our changes. But when it lands in 4 years, let's try to send it back up with the pilot of our choice. The world is watching, as I mentioned yesterday. The nation is watching. The next generation is watching. More importantly, God is watching. It's time for us to get on the phones and begin to speak out to our representatives, regardless of their political party, and let them know, I don't want you presenting a subjective case in the final 12 days that's going to put us on a slippery slope moving forward for generations for the sake of political gain, when in essence, it's going to hurt every single one of us. Because you must ask the question, at what point will they push this Constitution further to start infringing on more of your rights, your freedoms, and the things you've come to enjoy? At what point? It's just a matter of time. Thank you again for watching. Remember, if you're connected with anyone that's not on Facebook, have them follow me at my YouTube channel, Dr. Tim Wesley. And as I sign off now, may God bless you. May he bless the great state of Texas and the United States of America. Thank you again for watching. God bless.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, worked for all my life,
You're welcome.
and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land.